So we're still on the topic of families, and just to recap a few things that we've covered over the weeks. Initially, I started out by kind of having a little assessment of your home, whether your home is blessed and whether it's under a curse, and kind of how to structure your home so you are blessed by God. And then we talked about termites that can come in and destroy that structure, such as pride, selfishness, and unforgiveness. And then last week we talked about what it takes to be a leader and kind of the role of the man and the woman in the home to lead their family, and some of the qualities of a good leader. And some of those included being a follower, first of all, a follower of Christ, and then being teachable, having character. I've got to refer to my notes here. Courageous, being a good listener, being respectful, and pure. So those are just a few things that really make a good leader. And so this morning, we're going to talk about raising children. And this applies to most of us here, and some of us have already raised our children, but now maybe have grandchildren. And some of these principles and these principles still apply no matter how old your children are, but this is both the mom and the dad's role, and so that's why we need to be a team. Husbands and wives need to be a team. There doesn't need to be friction, because that's sending mixed messages to your children. You really need to work as a team, and when there's a disagreement, and there's often disagreements on how children should be raised, you guys should come together and talk about it, and you should refer to the scripture to lead you. And it shouldn't be, well, this is how I was raised, and this is how we're going to do it, and this is how you were raised, and back and forth. No, really should go to the scripture and say, how are we to raise our children? So, first of all, the parent's role is to love their children, and that just seems like a given, right? When you first hold that little bundle, you automatically feel love, a deep love. But sometimes as they get a little older and they start expressing their own will a little bit, a little tension can come in the home, and then mom and dad are at odds with each other, and the child disrupts the home with their little acts of tempers and things like that. So anyway, you really have to love them all the way through with a godly love. And we talked about what true love is. It's looking after the best interest of another. But Titus 2, 3, and 4 says that the older women are to teach the younger women to love their children. It's like, why does that have to be taught? Everybody loves their children, right? Not always. And I was blessed with a very loving mother and father, but not everyone has had that opportunity. And so if you weren't given that opportunity, that doesn't give you an excuse not to be that loving parent, because you're here in the presence of God, and you're here to learn how God would have you do it. So to love your children is the first part and most important part of a parent's role. And how do you show that? You show them affection. Give them undivided attention. Listen to them and set boundaries for them. Sometimes parents have this, I'm your parent, I'll tell you, and I know it all kind of attitude, where I've learned more from my children than I ever could have taught them. They've taught me more. So we need to listen to our children, because you know what? We can learn from them. And we need to set boundaries for them. And we'll get into some how to discipline later and how to bring correction. But really setting boundaries shows your children, whether they like it or not right now, but they know that mom and dad love me because they've set boundaries for me. The parents who don't care, who don't want to put up the fight, just let them do their thing. That's not love. That's selfishness. It's like, you know what? It's just easier to let them go. It's just easier to let them do their own thing so I don't have to deal with contention. That's selfishness. When we set boundaries and we're consistent with those boundaries, our children feel secure and they feel loved. I think that's a place where a lot of, parents, yes, they love them, but they don't love them enough to set boundaries. I think a lot of people really fall away there, and Then the little 2-year-old that had no boundaries now is 16 and is making mom and dad's home less than peaceful. So we got to start when they're little. So we love our children, we nurture our children. And what does it mean to nurture? And again, some of us, this just is a natural instinct. Why do you have to teach it? Not everyone has had the gift of parents that nurture them. So now they haven't had a role model. So now they don't know how to teach their children. We see kind of that cycle of that lack of nurturing. And what is nurturing? Just feeding, protecting, supporting, and encouraging their children. Ephesians 6:4, I'll just go there real quickly, and it says, "Fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord." You need to nurture them, protect them, support them, encourage them. Don't provoke them. What does that mean? Don't stir them up to anger. Don't stir them up to rebellion. Kids go through a stage where they're trying to find themselves, and they're going from childhood to adulthood, and they're kind of stuck in that middle, and they're going to try their wings a little bit, and parents need to give them some space, still with boundaries. But during that time of maybe a little bit of rebellion, don't provoke them further to rebellion, but nurture them, encourage them. And I think a lot of children, and I've seen parents be so harsh with their children, just the words they say and the tone of voice they say it. It astounds me because I hurt for the kid, because I can just see the look on their face that just falls. And, all the parent had to do was just, yes, correct them, but do it in a gentle manner. I've seen parents tell their kid, just shut up, just go sit down. And it's like, that just grates me the wrong way, because there's a way to say it. There should be a gentleness, and that's part of the nurturing. And then teaching and admonishing. Admonish means, the Bible uses that as a word to mean to counsel or to advise. And I have a couple scriptures here. Again, the one I just read about, don't provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition. That's training and instruction of the Lord. And then Proverbs 22:6. And if you'd like to turn there, you're welcome to. It would be really good just to write these scriptures down and then go back and do your own study later, but because I think all of us want to be the best parent we possibly can be. So this is all just straight from the scripture, and you're probably familiar with this one. Train a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not turn from it. When you're young, when your kids are young, that's when you need to start the training. That's when you need to start teaching them. And it's actively teaching them. It's not just assuming they're going to learn by osmosis. Yes, they're going to learn from their environment, but if mom and dads don't sit down and teach their children, don't leave it all up to the schools. Don't leave it all up to the teachers. When those babies are babies, you're teaching them where's their nose, where's their ears. You're teaching them colors, you're teaching them numbers, you're teaching them words. Sometimes parents just think it's the teacher's job. No. All that training starts in the home. And I'm not just talking about ABCs. I'm talking about character, teaching them honesty, teaching them to set their own boundaries and set goals and do their chores. Why? This is all training. And you know what? Some people just take it so easy on their children, take it so easy on them, that when they become adults and they face hardships, they don't know how to handle it. Because everything's been done for them, every decision's been made for them, and they haven't been taught. You know what? You get up and you go to work whether you feel like it or not. You get up and go to school whether you feel like it or not. And teaching them that, but we see a society where kids rule because parents don't have the strength or the wisdom to be that strong leader. So raising our children, and we just see in society that children, many, many children of many homes are just clueless on how to function in society. They don't set boundaries. They do what they feel like, when they feel like it, how they want to do it, because mom and dad have never set an example, have never sat down and taught them. Character must be taught. Your personalities might be something you're born with, but character qualities are something that's taught. Being teachable. We talked about being a leader. You got to be teachable. You got to teach your kids to be teachable. Be respectful. You have to teach them. You don't talk like that to mom and dad. Hear little kids saying no when their mom and dads tell them to do something and they say no. And mom and dad let them get by with it. It's like that was a big taboo in my house when they were little. They never said no. They didn't say no. They weren't allowed to say that. It's like if they were told to do something and they adamantly said no, they were disciplined in some manner. You don't say no. You do what you're told. That's teaching them to accept authority. Why? Because they'll always have to answer to somebody. So when their boss or their drill sergeant or the police officer tells them something, they're not going to sass back. They're going to do what they're told. And that you start when they're real little. So being teachable, being respectful, being kind. Teaching them to be kind to each other, to share. Just when they're little, you share your toys, right? We're teaching them to be kind and to think of others. Be thankful. Teaching them not just to say thanks, but to have a grateful heart. To be responsible, do their chores, set boundaries, stick with them. And then to be committed, being faithful. We go to church every Sunday. That's a given. Has to be some real dire situations if we're not in church on Sunday. And when my kids were little, it was Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night, and any special events in between. So why? Teaching them to be committed, teaching them to be faithful. Teaching them that there is protection in the fear of the Lord. And this is a totally lesson for another day because there's so many scriptures to back it up. But fearing the Lord. Why? Teaching them by example to fear the Lord. Because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. The fear of the Lord leads to life. When they know there's a bigger power, a bigger authority to answer to, they'll hold themselves accountable. And then disciplining, and that's a tough one. So we've learned you got to love your children. You've got to nurture them. You've got to teach them. You've got to discipline them, bring correction. That's a tough one. In this day and age of so much abuse and so much misuse of authority, people don't know how to truly discipline their children. And you know what? Timeouts work to some extent with some certain children. But it's not the all in all of disciplining. Let's see what the scripture says. Let's go to Proverbs 22. Remember I said Proverbs is an awesome book to give you practical wisdom, practical instruction that you can use every day, especially in the home. Proverbs 22:15. Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him. You don't have to teach your kids to sin or to lie or to be selfish, right? It's part of our nature that we're born with, that sinful nature that we're born with. So it's already in their heart. And how do we drive it out? The rod of correction will drive it far from him. Does that mean beating your kid? No, it doesn't. Corporal punishment, a little spanking on the bottom where there's extra padding. It doesn't hurt the child. You know what it does? It teaches them that their actions bring consequences. A little pain because you did wrong teaches them, I don't want to do that again. Why do we do it? It's not something you do to the children. It's something you do for them. You're doing it for them. Why? Because you're trying to teach them. Keep them on the straight and narrow. Why? Because you know if they do wrong, if they infarct the rules, if they break the laws, There's going to be consequences to pay, and that's just teaching them. It's not fun. It's not easy. Many people don't know how to do it. And they think, and they've misdefined the term discipline. They've misdefined spanking. And it's not beating your child. It's not inflicting pain to cause harm. It's inflicting a little pain to teach them. Proverbs 23, it's again about setting boundaries. Proverbs 23, 13 through 14. How am I on time, Luke? That's all right. Okay, I'm just trying to keep it to 15 minutes, so I'm all ready? Okay. Just a couple more scriptures. Proverbs 23, 13 and 14. Do not withhold discipline from your child. If you punish him with a rod, he will not die. Punish him with a rod and save his soul from death. Wow, that's a big responsibility, isn't it? Do you know what that means? That when you're teaching the child that they're afraid to do wrong because they don't want the pain that comes with it. You know what you're ultimately training them? To fear God, to obey his laws. Why? Ultimately to save their soul from hell and death. It's something you do because you love your child. Proverbs, last scripture, Proverbs 29, 15 and 17. The rod of correction imparts wisdom, but a child left to himself disgraces his mother. Verse 17, discipline your son and he will give you peace. He will bring delight to your soul. Quick illustration. When my children were little, and I had 4 in 5 years, so when my son was 5, I had 3 more under him. And I remember going to the grocery store with all 4 of them. And, you know, I had a front pack here, and one in the front of the cart, one in the back of the cart, one holding my hand down here to the side, and getting groceries. Without fail, I have somebody come up to me and say, how did you do that? How do you do that? They're so well behaved. A lot of love and a little discipline. They knew the rules. They knew they needed to behave. And you know what? They had fun. They weren't scared of mommy. But they knew that they had to obey. And it's something you do for your children. But you know what? When you do it for your children, not only does it bring them peace, but it brings you peace, and it brings peace in your home. So love them, nurture them, teach them, discipline them, and above all, set an example. You can't expect your children to be thankful if you have an ungrateful heart. You can't expect your children to be honest if you lie. You can't expect your children to be faithful if you are unreliable and undependable. Ephesians 5:1 says, be imitators of God. Set an example for your kids. That's the best thing you can do for them, is to practice what you preach. Do what you say. Show them the way. Show them. Live it yourself. And God will be with you. So that's all I have for today. Thank you.